In the heart of bustling Seoul, where neon lights paint the night sky and dreams are forged in the crucible of ambition, lived Ha-hyun, a 32-year-old single mother. Her world wasn't one of glamour or luxury. It was a world of quiet determination and fierce love for her little daughter Somi. Every morning, long before the city stirred, Ha-hyun would rise. She'd prepare a simple breakfast for Somi, a quiet moment of tenderness before the day's demands took over. Then she'd make her way to a small, unassuming cafe tucked away on the corner of a quiet street. This cafe was her sanctuary, her battlefield, the only place that paid just enough to keep a roof over their heads and ensure Somi could attend school. Life hadn't been a fairy tale for Ha-hyun. Her husband had walked out when Somi was just a baby, leaving behind a mountain of debt and a cavern of broken promises. But despair was a luxury she couldn't afford. Every time she looked into her daughter's bright, innocent eyes, she found a reason to smile, a reason to fight. Somi was her why, her anchor in a stormy sea. One rainy evening, as the city wept onto the pavement, the cafe's bell chimed unexpectedly, just as Ha-hyun was about to close. A tall man stood in the doorway, a silhouette against the fading light, drenched from head to toe. His suit, though soaked, was impeccably tailored, a silent testament to a world far removed from her own. Yet, his face was a mask of exhaustion, a profound weariness that seemed to seep from his very bones. Without a word, Ha-hyun handed him a clean towel and a steaming cup of coffee. "Rough day?" she asked, her voice soft, a gentle ripple in the quiet cafe. The man looked up, his gaze locking with hers. For a fleeting second, a connection sparked between them, a simple, unspoken moment of understanding that would irrevocably alter the course of both their lives. His name was Min-jun, and at 26, he was the CEO of one of South Korea's most successful tech companies. From the outside, he was the epitome of success, wealth, power, and the admiration of millions. But within the gilded cage of his life, he was profoundly lonely. He was a man drowning in expectations, the emptiness of a life built on profit margins and shareholder meetings, not genuine human connection. That night, something about Ha-hyun's quiet strength and the kindness in her eyes lingered in his mind long after he left the cafe. It was a warmth he hadn't felt in a very long time. So, the next day he came back. And the day after that. Visiting the small cafe became his secret ritual, his escape. He would sit by the window, a laptop open on the table as a pretense, his eyes following Ha-hyun as she moved with quiet grace behind the counter. She didn't smile often, but when she did, it was like the sun breaking through the clouds, warming a part of his soul that he thought had frozen over long ago. Slowly, over weeks of shared mornings and quiet observations, they began to talk. Not about business or high society, but about life. She told him about her daughter, the funny things Somi said, her struggles to make ends meet, and her simple, heartfelt dream of one day opening her own small bakery. Min-jun listened, utterly captivated. He saw in her a resilience he had never known, a strength forged in adversity that far outshone any corporate victory he had ever achieved. To Ha-hyun, he was just Min-jun, a polite and quiet customer who seemed unusually interested in her homemade pastries. She had no clue that the humble man who sat in her cafe each morning was the powerful Kang Min-yoon, a titan of industry. Then disaster struck. One afternoon, Somi fell gravely ill, her fever spiking dangerously. The hospital bills were staggering, a sum Ha-hyun couldn't possibly afford. Panic seized her, cold and suffocating. But the next morning, when she arrived at the hospital, her heart heavy with dread, a nurse gave her astounding news. The entire bill had been paid in full, by an anonymous benefactor. Her first thought was of Min-jun. When she gently questioned him about it later, he simply offered a small, enigmatic smile. "Maybe someone out there just wanted to help a good mother," he said, his eyes holding a depth she couldn't quite decipher. A few days later, another shock awaited her. A letter arrived, informing her that Somi had been accepted into a prestigious private school, with a full scholarship. The scholarship was funded by Min-chun's company. The pieces clicked into place, and her suspicion turned to furious clarity. She stormed into the towering glass skyscraper that housed his company, demanding to see him. She found him in a sprawling office with a panoramic view of the city. "Do you pity me?" she shouted, her voice trembling with a mixture of anger and humiliation. "Do you think your money can just fix everything in my life?" Min-jun stood silently, letting her words wash over him. He didn't defend himself. He just looked at her, his expression one of pained sincerity. "I don't pity you, Ha-yoon," he said, his voice low and steady. "I admire you more than anyone I've ever met. I love you." The confession hung in the air, a stunning, unbelievable declaration. Ha-yoon was floored. "Don't joke with me," she stammered, shaking her head. "Look at you. You're rich, you're young, you have the world at your feet. I'm just a single mother from a tiny cafe. Our worlds can't mix." But Min-jun was resolute. He didn't care about their different worlds. He wanted to be a part of hers. From that day forward, he set out to prove his feelings were real. He showed her his love not through grand, empty gestures of wealth, but through small, meaningful acts of service. He visited Somi in the hospital, reading her stories until she fell asleep. He showed up at the cafe with a toolbox and fixed the leaky faucet she'd been complaining about for months. He even donned an apron and tried to learn how to bake her favorite pastries, creating a floury mess but making her laugh in the process. Slowly, meticulously, he began to chip away at the walls she had built around her heart. She refused to admit it, even to herself, but she was falling for him too. Just as a fragile hope began to blossom, their private world was shattered. CEO Kang Min-jun seen with unknown woman and child. The headlines screamed from every newsstand and tabloid website. Photographers camped outside her cafe, their cameras flashing like lightning, turning her life into a public spectacle. The scandal erupted. Min-chun's board of directors demanded he end the inappropriate relationship. His family, steeped in tradition and status, called Ha-hoon a gold-digging mistake, a stain on their perfect lineage. The pressure was immense, a tidal wave threatening to drown them both. To protect Ha-yoon and Somi from the vicious storm, Min-jun made a decision that shocked the nation. He called a press conference and announced his resignation. He walked away from it all, the company he had built, the immense wealth he had accumulated, the reputation he had painstakingly crafted. He gave up his kingdom for her. Ha-hoon was overwhelmed, watching the news on a small television, tears streaming down her face. "Why?" she cried when he found her later. "Why would you do this?" He gently wiped her tears, his touch more reassuring than any words. "Because for the first time in my life," he said, his voice filled with a newfound peace, "I want to live for myself, and for the people who make me feel truly alive." They left Seoul behind, escaping the city's glare for the tranquil embrace of a quiet coastal town. There by the sea, Ha-hoon finally opened her own little bakery. It wasn't grand, but it was hers. And every day, Min-jun was there by her side, kneading dough, laughing at how terrible he was at it, his designer suits replaced with flour-dusted aprons. Somi, now healthy and bright, started calling him uncle, but everyone in their small, welcoming community could see he was so much more than that. He was family. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in strokes of gold and crimson, Min-jun took her hand and led her outside the bakery. With the scent of salt and freshly baked bread hanging in the air, he knelt before her. "This time," he said softly, his eyes reflecting the sunset, "I'm not your customer, or your CEO. I'm just the man who loves you, who wants to be your family." Tears welled in Ha-yoon's eyes, but for the first time in years, they were tears of pure joy. She was no longer just surviving. She was loved, cherished, and whole. And as the gentle sea breeze whispered around them, Ha-yoon looked at the man who had given up the world for her and whispered the two words he had been waiting to hear. "Welcome home. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey." If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content like this. See you in the next video.